You must tell me all your secrets. Remember, we must share everything together. Everything.
You and me are going out tonight. Wear something cute, okay?
You always do what Jennifer tells you to do.
It's just that I like the same things that she likes.
Hey, Jennifer. You look really pretty.
Why don't you just come by my place? Well, this is random.
This isn't really your house, is it?
We can play mommy and daddy.
No way.
We always share your bed when we have slumber parties. Jennifer's evil.
I know.
No, I mean, she's actually evil. Not high school evil. Chip is looking really cute to me lately. How is he tasting these days? You are never a good friend. You could have anybody that you want. Why Chip? You're killing people. No, I'm killing boys. Are you scared? Thought you only murdered boys. I go both ways. I will finish you if I have to. Okay. You can barely finish gym class.
Hi, this is Annie Rose Malamet, and you're listening to Girls, Guts, and Giallo. Today, I'm joined over the phone by my friend Serafina, and we're going to be talking about Jennifer's Body from 2009, written by Diablo Cody, directed by Karen Kusama, and starring Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried, and Adam Brody is also in it. So, Serafina, do you want to say a little bit about who you are, what you do, what you're about?
Hi, I'm Serafina Wilder. I am an LA-based burlesque performer, and when I'm not stripping, I am, studying, getting my master's degree, and doing other weird shit during the day.
Nice. And what are you getting your master's in? I know, but, just so the listeners know.
I'm getting my master's in English literature with a focus on sexual deviancy and medieval literature.
God, that's so fucking cool, Serafina. Like, has there ever been a cooler, master's focus? I don't know if there has been.
I would hope so. I'm pretty sure my advisor was like, "You fucking weirdo."
No, it's amazing. And you're amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So you picked for our episode. We had been going back and forth about a few things. You were thinking Preaching to the Perverted, which I have actually not been able to get my hands on, so I still haven't seen it.
You have to come watch it with me.
Yes, I have to go back to LA and watch it with you. And we also were going to we might have done Dancing at the Blue Iguana, but then you suggested Jennifer's Body, and I think that is a great movie to do because I think a lot of people have seen it, especially people our age. Mm-hmm. And it just turned 10 years old, really recently. So it's really prescient. So what made you want to do this movie? When did you first see it, and what did you think about it when you saw it?
I saw Jennifer's Body, I would say, roughly when it came out, actually. Not in theaters, but when it came out on DVD and I saw it. I was really into the idea of a horror film with a female protagonist. And I also like the idea of Megan Fox being the villain. But this is also during that time when everyone was really not into Megan Fox.
Yeah.
So, but I also I love horror movies and I love horror comedies specifically. And it looked funny. When I saw the trailer, I was like, this is going to be really campy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I saw it in theaters when it came out. And I think at the time, like, you know what's weird about it is I remember it being billed as a rape revenge movie. And it's not really like it is metaphorically, but it's not, there's no like literal rape in the movie.
Right.
And I have always been a huge fan of rape revenge films, so that's kind of what made me go see it. And also, I mean, it was 2009. I was like 19, and I think like Juno had come out not long ago, and I guess like I was sort of interested to see what kind of horror movie Diablo Cody was going to write. And I remember like I didn't love it when I first saw it. And it was only when because I thought it was going to be something really different. And then when I rewatched it, I like really loved it. So that is my background with the movie. So Diablo Cody, and it's written by Diablo Cody, directed by Karen Kusama. They said that they wanted to make a teen horror movie like The Lost Boys. Yeah, that was comedic, but also dark and focused on teenage girls, not teenage boys. And that's really interesting because I'm actually doing an episode on The Lost Boys soon. So this is a really good, like, double episode for that.
Hey, segue.
Yes. And they wanted to subvert male-dominated horror tropes where women are being terrorized. So thus Jennifer's Body. And the title comes from, as we know, a Hole song, of course.
Yes.
So that, it kind of like automatically gives it this like Riot Girl feel and aesthetic to it. Like it's so obviously directed at girls.
And Jennifer's Body song is so amazing and also very dark at the same time as well. So
yeah, totally. And I, at the time when it came out, like I was such one of those like assholes who was mad that people didn't know it was a Hole song. Because I mean, it adds something to the movie, like to know that. Yes. For sure.
Yeah.
And Diablo Cody started writing it right after Juno in 2007, and then the movie came out in 2009. So Diablo Cody had sort of like now made a name for herself as specializing in this snarky, over-the-top teen dialogue. And, as we know, but some people might not know, she started her writing career when she was a stripper, and she had and she had a popular blog in 2003 about stripping called The Pussy Ranch, where she wrote under the name Darling Girl. So this is like a lot was made of this when Juno came out, like her background as a stripper. Right. And also because at 27 she had already written a memoir called Candy Girl, A Year in the Life of an Unlikely Stripper, which like full disclosure, I haven't read any of that.
I have not read it. I know of Diablo Cody. I think for me what stands out in my mind about her is that she wore like a leopard print dress to some awards show and people were freaking out.
Yes. This was a moment. Like Diablo Cody, Megan Fox, like this was definitely a moment. And Karen Kusama, she made her feature film debut in 2000 with the film Girl Fight. And she went on to direct Aeon Flux and Jennifer's Body, and her most recent film is Destroyer, starring Nicole Kidman, which I haven't seen yet. But Kusama is really known for her female protagonists and the feminist themes in her work. She has said herself that she's a feminist filmmaker and that she's most interested in telling women's stories. But I really wanted to talk about Megan Fox. So
okay. Let's talk about Megan Fox.
Yeah, let's talk about Megan Fox. So when she did this film, she had made her. Well, first of all, something I recently found out was that she went on a really strict diet to look like a teenager, and she weighed 97 pounds in this film. So,
oh my god,
I know it's like it's kind of sick. So she made her film debut in 2004 opposite Lindsay Lohan in Confessions of a Teenage Drama Queen, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2007, her breakout role was when she was starred as the love interest of Shia LaBeouf, another person who's fallen from grace, in Transformers. And this was
Oh,
like,
you mean the Oscar-nominated Transformers?
yes, awkward Shia in Transformers. And at the time, like the mid-aughts, this was a, you know, it's an interesting time because we were like teens. And Megan Fox rose to fame as a sex symbol. She was in Maxim, Rolling Stone, and LA Times called her the first bona fide sex symbol of the 21st century.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So she was it back then. I remember like she was fucking everywhere. Like she literally, and people, the interesting thing about it is, so she was raised like really a strict Pentecostal actually. And she fell from grace like right before this movie, Jennifer's Body, because in 2009, she was like under fire for comments she made comparing the Transformers director Michael Bay to Hitler. So
yeah,
yeah. So Michael Bay did not bring her back for the third Transformers movie. And since then, she has never enjoyed the success that she had in her early acting days. So she really fell. And despite being considered a sex symbol, she has said herself that she's not very sexual and that men in particular make her extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, she's gone on record saying that too.
Yeah. I mean, she's actually, at the time, like when it wasn't trendy yet, she was very critical of men in the industry. So that, I mean, I think like now with everything going on with the Me Too, the rise of Me Too and all that stuff, I am predicting that Megan Fox will have some kind of like comeback.
I hope so.
I hope so too. I think she's great. I think like she's really beautiful and like outspoken and people hate that. So I think that's part of why she's just not seen anymore. And she said that when she that the sex symbol persona that she cultivated was a character that she created for her public image because she was unwilling to sacrifice her true self to the world. And I think anyone who's done sex work can really relate to that. So
yeah,
that really resonates with me.
Not to interject, but interjecting.
Go ahead.
I recall seeing an interview with her where they were asking, I think it was like one of those New York Times bits where they have the actors sit down and they ask them like a bunch of questions. And they asked Megan Fox about her Marilyn Monroe tattoo, which I think she's had it removed now.
She has, yeah.
But she was saying something about how she really gravitated towards Marilyn Monroe creating a persona as an actress. So I think that's interesting that you mentioned that she built this persona because that kind of mirrors what Marilyn Monroe was doing according to Megan Fox. So I always got the feeling that her persona was a little bit put on, but not in an annoying way, just that she was kind of aware of how the media was consuming her image.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And she's gotten it removed. She said she got it removed because she doesn't want to emulate that tragic life and story. So, which, I mean, kind of goes hand in hand with her, like, really disappearing from the public eye. So it's, I mean, yeah, she's very self-aware. And at the time, I think people just thought she was like this hot bimbo with like not a thought in her head. And like, you know, obviously, you know, that's something that Marilyn Monroe also went through. So it's, you know, there's a really apt comparison there. And she was at the time like celebrated for her sexuality and derided. Like people thought she was, you know, she was on all these covers and everything, but then people started to feel like she was overexposed. And the popular pre-men's rights blog, askmen.com.
Oh my God,
I remember them. Yeah.
Oh yes, I remember them.
They called for like a media boycott of her. So, which was like in the
Wow,
news.
okay.
Yeah, I know. Fuck off. So it's like, I mean, it's like she couldn't win. And I mean, you can't win as a woman. That's it's like you're too hot or you're too ugly, like something, you know? So it's.
You just can't win.
No, you can't win. And I mean, this is somebody who was like playing into everything that the male gaze wanted of her and still could not win. So it's, you know,
Because they didn't want her to win.
no, they did not want her to win, and they didn't want her to be outspoken and self-aware.
Oh, no. No.
I have a note here that because Amanda Seyfried is obviously also in the movie, and her career is just not that interesting to talk about, but it is worth noting that her breakout role was Mean Girls, as we know. But she's been very, like, you know, kind of quiet. She doesn't really have like a super huge public persona or anything. She just kind of.
But she was in. Okay, so I know you're also a fan of erotic thrillers.
Of course.
And she was in that movie with Julianne Moore, Chloe, which I thought. I have my own thoughts about that movie, but I will say it was a good performance by Amanda. I can never pronounce her name correctly, so I always just say Amanda.
No,
I'm
it's
like,
fine.
Oh,
I
Amanda.
mean, no. I mean, she's a good, like, I like her as an actress. I think, like, something interesting to notice, she really wanted this part because she sort of wanted to break out of, like, just playing a hot bimbo kind of character. So that is interesting. So when the movie came out, it received some positive reviews, but mostly negative. And a lot of people think, like, since the rise of Me Too, the film has been reevaluated as a feminist classic. And, like, it's widely thought that the negative reviews that it received were because it was being looked at through this misogynist horror lens where, like, horror writers think that everything is for men, like, and this wasn't. So it was just not given the respect that it deserves as a movie. The writer Constant Grady, writing for Vox, said of the sacrifice scene that a group of powerful men sacrificing a girl's body on the altar of their own professional advancement is uncomfortably relevant for our time. And she also compared the way the band mocks Jennifer during the sacrifice to Dr. Christine Blasey Ford's account of being assaulted by Brett Kavanaugh. So
yeah, I saw that article.
Yeah. And actually I'm going to link it all in my Patreon, all the articles I read to do research for this. And my friend Sarah wrote a really great article about the anniversary of Jennifer's body, and I'm mentioned in it for
I saw that too.
Yeah, for pointing out that Needy is, like, her name is Needy Les, basically Needy Les Nikki. So I you know, whether or not that was intentional, I don't know. But that is the background of Jennifer's body. So we can start talking about the plot.
All right.
Let's get into it.
You mean the very complicated, almost Russian literature style plot of this movie?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a really interesting comparison. Why do you feel like it's a Russian literature style plot?
I just feel that there's, you know, it seems very simple, the plot, but it's also kind of deceptively simple. Like, there's more to meet the eye with this movie because I feel like there's a lot going on with it in subtext.
Yeah. No,
the subtext
totally.
is almost just as poignant as the plot itself. I'm not sure if that was intentional or not, but watching it last night, I was like, oh my God, the subtext is running the show.
Oh my God, totally. And I think it was intentional. Like, Diablo Cody and Karen Kusama said in multiple interviews around the film that, you know, all of these things were really intentional and that they were really talking about larger issues in the movie. So the movie opens with Amanda Seyfried, Needy, in a hospital. And she's getting a lot of letters, so we know that she's, like, kind of famous for something bad. And
Mhm.
one of like her major acts in the beginning is that she kicks a nurse in the face and gets thrown into solitary. That's where she starts to narrate and weave her tale. So it's an interesting opening. I mean, like, we already know from the outset that like something fucked up has happened.
Right.
And we cut now to Devil's Kettle, which is a small town that has this falls, like these waterfalls, and in the waterfalls is this like water vortex where people throw things into it, and they don't know where it comes out of. They don't know where it leads out of. So that's called Devil's Kettle.
Very Freudian.
Yes.
Very Freudian.
Oh my God, so Freudian. Yes.
Yeah.
And this is the first time we see Jennifer, and she doesn't look good. She's watching a workout infomercial, and she's picking at her skin. And we see Needy sneak up through the window and says, Jennifer didn't always look this rough. And that is when we really start to get into what the backstory of what happened.
Right.
And we cut back to the past where we see that Jennifer is this gorgeous cheerleader. And, you know, the beauty of Megan Fox is really like showcased here.
They really went for maximum glamour right there.
They did. And she's like, I mean, just like the perfect, like, beautiful cheerleader from any teen movie.
I know. I have to point out that I love that it's not even just cheerleading. She's doing tall flags.
What is that? Tell me.
Tall flags is like, okay, it's like a subset of cheerleading. And, you know, I don't know a lot about it. I did it briefly for about like 2 weeks and then decided to stop doing it. So it's kind of like, I've heard other people refer to it as madrigals, but I know that we also refer to it as flags. So you're like dancing, but you have these giant tall flags that you're like spinning around. So it can look really cool. And I love that they decided to go with that as her cheerleading as opposed to, you know, just standard cheerleading.
Oh, yeah, because it's like majestic.
Standard cheerleading.
Yeah. And Needy says, she's like looking at Jennifer from the bleachers longingly, and she says, "Sandbox love never dies." And this girl, Chastity, taunts Needy that she's like in love with Jennifer and she's a total les. And this is like when the like love, the like sexual and the romantic tension between them is immediately on display. And
because she calls her lesbian gay, right?
Yes, yeah. She's like, you're like in love with her. I mean, and she so obviously is. And Low Shoulder is,
oh my God.
Jennifer wants to go see Low Shoulder, the band, fronted by Adam Brody. And she wants to go see them because she saw them on MySpace. And
long live MySpace.
Yes. And she wants to go with Needy, and she says, wear something cute. And Needy says, like, this is code. Like, she couldn't look like a total zero, but she also couldn't upstage her. So that's what Jennifer means by wear something cute. It's so, I mean, yeah, Jennifer and Needy are in like a 24/7 SM relationship in this movie. Like, she completely like
so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much so that Chip comments on it.
Yes.
He's like, you always do what Jennifer wants you to do. Like, he has this. Chip is a fascinating character for me in the sense that he's so boring. Like, he's literally like, when I was watching the movie, I was like, his name is Chip. That's all I could think.
Oh my God. And it has to be on purpose. Like, that's a really good point because, yeah.
I hope it's on purpose.
It has to be. I mean, he's just like some everyman. I mean,
he's like,
go ahead.
He's always like, so he was like, oh my God, I say like way too much. He tells Needy that it's weird how she just knows that Jennifer is there.
Yeah, they're telepathically connected.
Because they're lesbian gay.
Because they're lesbian gay. Yeah. I mean, he's like, it's interesting too because there's like a couple. There's all the women in this movie are archetypes, but they're like fleshed out. But the men in this movie are archetypes, but they have like no backstory or anything really going on. Like, but they're just like, yeah, like Chip is just kind of every nice kind of generic high school boy. Colin is like a generic emo boy. What's his name? The guy who gets ripped apart. Jonas is like some football jock. Like there's just like a couple of archetypes of men, and like Adam Brody is like the, band guy that you think is like really cute and sensitive, but is actually like an absolute misogynist. So
yeah, it's a reversal. It's a reversal of what we see in horror films that are male dominated.
Yes.
Where women get reduced to being archetypes.
Exactly. So it's a really good point you bring up. And Needy is like you said, telepathically connected to Jennifer. And this is like we start getting Diablo Cody's like famous snarky teen phrases where, Megan is like, "You're jealous. You're totally jello. You're lime green jello." Like no actual teenager talks like this, but it sounds like they could. Like it's very like Heathers.
It's very YA novel, like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So Jennifer and Needy head to Melody Lane, which is the shitty bar in town, and we see that a bunch of guys there are obsessed with Jennifer. We see Chris Pratt and a younger Chris Pratt, and he's like a cadet, and he's fucking Jennifer or whatever.
Oh wait, but Diablo Cody's also in that scene.
Oh,
he's the bartender.
Oh my god, I didn't even notice.
Yeah, there's a split second where they show Diablo Cody. She's wearing like flannel or something, and they show her for a brief second, and she looks very annoyed.
Hilarious. Oh my god, that's great. And Adam Brody is the singer of Low Shoulder. Adam Brody was the OC still on at this point? I think so.
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, and I think like he plays such an asshole in this movie, and I never watched the OC, full disclosure, I really should, but I believe on that show that he's like a nice sweet guy on the OC, right?
Yeah.
So
he's playing against his type.
Yeah, and now he's playing an asshole in this movie, so it's like he kind of, wanted to show his range. So Jennifer says to Needy, like, don't be nervous around boys. They're just boys, morsels. We have all the power. So she immediately calls them morsels, which is foreshadowing for what's going to happen. And Jennifer introduces herself to Adam Brody, and she's awkward around the band, like a normal teenage girl. And I was wondering, do you think this is an act, or is she like a calculated seductress, where she's just pretending to be awkward?
Ooh, when I was watching it last night, there was something that jumped out at me. Like, I feel that Jennifer's character is like really perplexing because of that scene in question. It definitely doesn't come off as an act. Like, if anything, her confidence is the one that feels a little more artificial. Because when she's talking to the guy, she's like, oh, they're like, so stylish. They're from the city and, and shit like that, And then she buys him a shooter, right? Like,
the 9/11 tribute shooter. Yeah. Yeah, that is so 2009.
Oh, gosh. But then I also thought, what we know about the band, was that like some kind of forces at play that were working on Jennifer? Like, who knows?
Yeah, no, that's right. Like, look, when you rewatch the movie, you start to see that a lot of things are actually like part of the band's witchcraft, basically. So the rocker dudes, Low Shoulder, are talking about how Jennifer is or is not a virgin amongst themselves. And, it sounds kind of just like a standard gross misogynist conversation. Like, nobody has any idea this is like a satanic sacrifice. And Needy overhears and is horrified and confronts him and tells him she is a virgin. Which I was like, girl, why? Like, don't even say anything. So Needy tells Jennifer about how they were talking about her, and she says, she like laughs and she's like, I'm not even a backdoor virgin anymore.
Thanks to Roman.
Yeah, exactly. And then they sing their song Through the Trees, and it's so,
Oh, God.
that song is so like mid-aughts indie rocker. Like, it perfectly encapsulates that time in music.
But I hate it so much. I hate it
It's
so
so
much.
bad. I mean, it's everything that's bad, that was bad about that genre. Like, they put it into that one song. And I personally am thrilled that that moment of music is over. Needy.
But do you think Jennifer, in all honesty, would have been listening to a band like Low Shoulder? I was a bit confused by that.
I
always
don't
thought she
think
was
so. Yeah.
like
No.
a pop kind of person.
No, she would have been listening to pop music. I mean, I was like only at this point like a year and a half out of high school, I feel like. So I was pretty I was like, I remember girls like that, and they were not listening to that music. Like the people who were listening to that, I wasn't either. I was like into goth and all that shit. But I remember like my friends who were listening to that kind of music were like they were like nerdy people, like
Yeah.
with like
Yeah, that's
thick
what
glasses.
Yeah, they were like wearing messenger bags.
Yes.
Like, this is not.
Yes. They were like wearing messenger bags and like reading questionable content, like that
Yeah,
webcomic. Yeah. And like, you know, saying like, I am the sex. I don't like, it just wasn't, you know, like they.
Roar means I love you and dinosaurs.
Yeah, exactly. She wasn't like the kind of person that was listening to this music. So the bar goes up
Definitely
in
a
flames.
Britney.
Definitely a Britney or like Fergalicious on repeat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the Pussycat Dolls.
Or
Like,
the Pussycat Dolls, yes. And I actually also liked all that stuff. But it's pop music. Who doesn't
Same.
like it? And the Needy spots the fire and the bar like goes up in flames, and Needy and Jennifer escape through the bathroom window. And Jennifer, like this, you like to your point about like the forces of the band, Jennifer is kind of hypnotized and in a trance, and Adam Brody finds them and he's like drinking a beer and he's like, well, I was looking for all over for you guys. And they escape, and like all these people in the bar fucking die, and Adam Brody, what the hell is his name in the movie? I forget his character name.
I don't remember his name.
It'll always
but
be Adam
the
Brody.
The bar scene is like the first taste of horror we actually really get, because like you see people on fire.
Yes.
There's like you hear bones cracking, and then this emo indie guy is like, "Oh yeah, that sucks. Your town bar is on fire. Have a drink."
Yeah, it's really like, it's very funny, the contrast there, and highlights like what an absolute creep he is. And
so creepy.
so creepy. And he's like trying to get them to come to his van, and he's being a typical creepy guy. And Jennifer wants to go to the van. She's like, I want to go to your cool van. And Needy is begging her not to. But ultimately, Jennifer gets in without her. And this is like one of the first major themes of the movie, is like girls protecting girls from other creeps. And girls
Right.
growing up and choosing guys over each other, and having to watch and accept that your friend is like choosing this dangerous situation over you.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And I
Or
don't know.
choosing heterosexuality over you as well, because we know that Needy is like low key in love with Jennifer, and
Yes.
she's watching her friend like choose this creepy dude in his, what did she call the van? Like a rapist van?
Yeah, which
Isn't
it
that what she-
is. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're watching your friend get into this car and just being like utterly powerless to stop it. It's like that's where the real horror for me was in the movie, watching these scenes with the band. I was like, this is actually scarier than anything else in the movie.
Oh, everything that comes after this is like wildly entertaining and like this hilarious kind of revenge story. And this is really, you're right, this is like the scariest part of the movie, because I'm sure like we've all, like women have all been there, especially queer women, when you're like in love with your friend and she's like choosing these, like you said, like these gross creeps over you. And there's nothing you can do about it because people have to make their own decisions. And I've been in situations where I desperately wanted somebody to not hook up with some guy, and then they did, and it ended up being really horrible and like non-consensual, and I felt so much guilt over it. Like I could have done something.
Right. And it's like, well, what could you have done? Like, because in that scene, we're all kind of like with Needy, like she couldn't physically get Jennifer to move because Jennifer went on her own volition. But then you also see the lore of the band and how there's so many of them, and they just, it's very, to me, that part was just so scary because when they close the van door, you get this feeling, it's like watching 48 Hours on TV, like that true crime show. And you're like, this is not going to end well. It's like,
no. Yeah, and that shot of like them locking eyes as the van door closes. And it's, the spell that Jennifer is under is very like metaphorical. Like young girls are often under a kind of like spell of older guys like treating them like they're adults when they know full well that they're not. I mean, that's the other thing. She's like 16. Like these guys are adults. So that's, the other really creepy part about it. So
there's also a really good line that Needy has in that scene, because I know we were talking about Diablo Cody's snarky writing, but there was one line that actually jumped out at me as being very realistic when Needy's like, he was skinny, twisted, and evil.
Yeah, like this evil tree that she saw when she was a kid. Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and it's that horrible
that
feeling.
So well.
It was so good. And it's that horrible feeling where you just like know that somebody is bad news and your friend can't see it. Needy, it's a horrible feeling. Needy calls Chip and tells him about the fire and Jennifer, and Chip is wildly unsympathetic about Jennifer. He's like, why do you care? Like, he's like, people died. Why do you care? It's like, okay, well, people died, but she could be like getting gang raped in this van. Like,
yeah, Chip doesn't care. He's like, oh, who cares?
I know. I actually really hated him this rewatch. And
as I keep saying, his name is Chip.
Yeah, his name is fucking Chip. Yeah, like I used to work with some asshole named Chip when I was in high school at a pharmacy, and I just like associate them together. This is when a crazed Jennifer breaks into Needy's house and terrifies her, and Jennifer is covered in blood and she looks insane, and she smiles this creepy smile, and raids Needy's fridge and starts feasting on a whole chicken. And that
was from Boston Market.
That's from fucking Boston Market, yeah. And she throws up a bunch of black spiky goo all over Needy. And there's this really like hot moment too where Jennifer pushes Needy up against the wall and seductively smells her and asks if she's scared.
Okay, I knew you were gonna comment on that part.
You know me.
I was watching it last night and I was like, this is that so.
It was hot. It's hot. And because
this is the first instance we see of Jennifer having there's that sexual fear and that fear of being like gay.
Yes.
Like,
yeah. Yeah, like there's a double entendre going there, asking her if she's scared. And it's also like equating, which is very common in horror, of queerness and monstrosity, and the feeling of being an other, and that is very prevalent in this movie. And there's like some very subtle and not so subtle ways that they do it. Needy, there's at school the next day, everybody's talking about the fire. Needy has this like flashback of her and Jennifer in the sandbox as kids, and she's like, telling Jennifer she'll never snitch on her. And Needy is shocked to see Jennifer. She comes to class and she seems completely unfazed, even though last night she was like crazed. So Needy tells Chip about the previous night with Jennifer, and he tells her to go talk to the school shrink. I hate him even more. Like, he just is so dismissive of her, and he acts like he loves her so much, but he doesn't listen to her until it's too late.
That's true. But can we go back just a second about when Jennifer shows up to class?
Yes, please.
So when she shows up to class, this is where we get more of Jennifer's personality, but like she's like ultra bitchy now. Like everything out of her mouth is so mean. Like,
oh yeah, she's not even a person.
She's like, yeah, she's not a nice person. And I think Needy says something, and she's like, Jennifer insults her by saying, you know, what's wrong with you aside from the obvious surface flaws? And you're like, ouch, like, so mean. Like,
yeah, she's really abusive.
She's really abusive. So we see this, you know, Jennifer that's very cruel, but also very unfazed. She's just so off, like, in that scene.
Yeah, and I think the reason Needy isn't taking it so personally is because I think she can feel that something is off. Like, she's being more mean than normal.
Yes, more mean than normal.
Yeah, which, you know, honestly, like, I can't speak to everybody's experience, but that, after I was raped when I was in high school, I became really mean. And that, you know, it's kind of like, we still, at this point in the movie, we don't know what's happened to her yet. Like, if you're watching this for the first time. So you don't know what happened to her in the van. And of course, my mind, like, is going to go to, oh, she came back and she's, like, bloody and, like, bedraggled. Like, she was assaulted. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of speaks to, like, this personality shift you can go through after experiencing some really intense trauma. So please continue to, like, interrupt and backtrack on scenes and stuff. I love it. So yeah,
that scene is also interesting in the sense that we see the teacher. Like, this is some of the humor that's in the movie.
Yes, the teacher.
I kind of like, there's some points where I'm like, I feel like there's funnier moments, but the teacher, I'm like, is he supposed to be funny because he's so out of touch? But then he has, like, a mechanical hand.
Oh my
God,
it's so random. Like,
and you're just like, why is it there? Like, what is going on? I'm just confused why he had a mechanical hand and why it was
no idea. Yeah, but it's just like he's really funny. And
his out of touchness is really funny.
Yes, it is. And then we also meet emo Colin, so that he'll become important.
Wait. I love Colin.
Yeah, I love Colin too. Colin is me in high school, honestly.
Exactly. I'm like, wait, Colin is me. So
I mean, later he invites Jennifer to go see the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Like, that, he's me. Yeah.
Isn't that a boxing movie?
Yeah, I really heavily related to him. There's this amazing shot of, like, the camera zooming in really, really fast over this football field, and it zooms in on Jonas, who's, like, this big jockey football player, and Jennifer is approaching him, and Jennifer uses the recent death of his friend Craig from the bar to seduce him, and they start making out in the woods, and all of
because she tells him, she's like, you know, your friend who was dying in a fire, his last words were like, we should hook up. Like,
yeah. That is funny. Even
Jonas is like, I don't think that's what happened, but you're hot, so continue.
Yeah, exactly. And as they're making out, all of the animals in the woods start to surround them.
That part was so creepy.
It's really creepy, and it's also, like, another major theme in the movie, which is women as seen as this primal, evil, sexual force. And, like, a lot of accusations of witchcraft back in the day used to be that women could, like, commune with animals and summon them and embody them and watch you. So it's this very, like, really smart way that they tied in, like, you know, women as animal, primal in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
And also, there's a lot of scenes, really important scenes in this movie, take place in the woods, which is
That's what I was going to mention.
Yeah.
That a lot of it takes place in the woods, which is always a really gothic, sort of trope, because you don't know what's going to happen in the woods. There's something dark about the woods, and it hides and obscures a lot of things. So the fact that she takes them to the woods is, you already feel the dread coming. You're like, oh no.
Yep.
Don't go into the woods with her. But
yeah,
it's a beautiful shot of the woods. So you get this beauty, but at the same time, a lot of terror,
Yeah, I mean, the woods is like that kind of romantic notion of the sublime, where it's like terrifying and all-consuming, but also extremely beautiful and awe-inspiring. So that's a lot of the scenes in the movie that take place in the woods have to do with this beauty and violence tied together. And in this scene in particular, Jennifer, it's like a kind of beautiful and sexually charged moment, but it's also becomes this horror because Jennifer unhinges her jaw and eats Jonas.
Oh my God. Because she tells him, do you miss your friend? Well, you're gonna see him real soon. I was
my God.
It's like, ah!
And he's like, what do you mean, like in heaven? I
was like, oh, the joke went over his head and now he's gonna die.
Exactly. And the teacher, the hilarious teacher, hears Jonas screaming in the woods, and he thinks that he's crying. And
he's like, get it out. Get it all out.
Let it out, kids. And he goes into, the screaming stops and he gets suspicious and he goes into the woods and he finds a deer eating Jonas's remains.
Ew.
Yeah, that's a fucked up scene. And it also goes back to the, the women and animal thing. So next scene, we meet Needy's bedraggled mother, played by Amy Sedaris, who has dreamt that bad people were trying to nail Needy to a tree.
Like JC.
Like JC. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So, more themes here, as you were saying, of the Gothic, which heavily uses Catholic imagery. So, and that kind of leads into the next scene, where Jennifer is the famous lake sequence.
Oh yes, yes,
it's so good. It was in the trailer, where Jennifer is completely naked, swimming across this lake, getting all the blood and grime off of her, and then she comes up onto the dock, and it's number one, a subversion of 80s teen sex comedies, because that, is I guess the most famous example is Fast Times at Ridgemont High,
right.
And, where a woman gets out of the pool and it's slow motion and it's for this male gaze, but in this, it's not for this male gaze. It's this really scary perversion of it that'll scare the shit out of men who watch it.
Yeah, I really love that scene because I feel like this was the bait and switch of the movie.
Yes.
The way they marketed the movie, it was oh, you're going to see lots of shots of Megan Fox like this, and this is basically the only shot like that in the film, just for that moment.
Yep, and
but
it's after a moment of horror.
Yeah, a lot of men and boys were thinking, all right, this movie's going to be nonstop hot Megan Fox, and it's to a degree that was true, but it was always, juxtaposed with lots of horrific images of Megan Fox.
Yeah, exactly. It's you could never really get quite a boner in this movie because she's also targeting men.
That fear boner, that fear boner that.
Well, I mean, yeah,
I'm scared, but I'm into it.
Exactly. Fear boner is you should really patent that term. So Jennifer calls, and it's also ties it to that primal imagery again, because she's completely in charge now of nature around her, and she is one with it. So Jennifer calls Needy in a great mood and is like, and this is when the other famous scene of the movie where she burns her tongue with a lighter and says, I am a god.
Yeah, that's immortalized on Tumblr, by the way. I've seen it
Yes.
so many times.
It is a highly Tumblred image. And it's classic. Like, it's a great moment in the movie. And it shows you how Jennifer is, like, you know, really coming into her power here. And, you know, she is kind of a god. I mean, she's like, you know, feasts on the living to sustain herself.
Yeah, she says I'm having like the best day since Jesus invented the calendar.
Yep, she's having a great
What
time.
Jesus references in this movie.
So good. That's the other thing is, like, there's a lot of references to God and Jesus, even when she says I am a god.
Yeah.
So Chip meets up with Needy, who tells him that Jonas was ripped limb from limb. And at school, everyone is depressed except Jennifer, who is in an amazing 2009 pink heart hoodie with pink heart
I
earrings.
love that sweater. I want it so much.
You need it. You need it. It would look great on you.
I need it in my life.
Yeah, you really do. I'm about to go on eBay and find it for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, my sister had that hoodie. Oh my God, maybe we can get it for you. Maybe it's still in her closet.
I thought it was a look. I was like, that's a look.
It really is, with the mini jean skirt. It's such a look.
I love that she's like walking through the hallway wearing all these feminine tropes, like the pink, and we know that she's like a monster at this point.
Yeah, she's literally murdered people and eaten them and eviscerated them, and she's like in this little pink heart hoodie.
It's that bait and switch again.
Exactly. That the movie plays with that a lot. Through the Trees has thoroughly taken over.
No.
Everyone is obsessed with Low Shoulder.
Yeah, because they're donating 3% of the profits from the song
3%.
to the town. 3.
But a month goes by and Jennifer was like really high, and now she's really not feeling too hot. And there's like a funny part in the movie where, you know, Needy says she's PMSing, and Megan Fox is like, PMS isn't real, Needy. It was invented by the boy-run media to make us seem crazy. And it's so funny because I love that Karen Kusama and Diablo Cody are playing with this idea of like being radicalized as a feminist, meaning now you're like a man-eater.
She's like a literal man-eater now.
Yeah, and she's like talking about the boy-run media. I mean, it's just really funny because it's like, this is sort of how men actually see feminists.
Yeah, that's the true feminist agenda right there.
Yeah. So I love that they are they're like making fun of it. And if you are not aware of like who the audience they're speaking to, like you wouldn't see it. So this is when Colin asks Jennifer out to see Rocky Horror. Same, Colin. And Jennifer says to Needy, my dick is bigger than his.
I know. God, she's like, I just have to interject again. You know, there's some lines that Jennifer's character says that are like, you're just like, wow, Jennifer, wow. Like, I would almost call it hipster bigotry, like, because there's a line earlier in the movie. Yeah, where she says something to Needy about her nails, and she's like, you should get a Chinese chick to buff them for you. And I'm like, are they doing this to show how evil she is? But it's definitely one of those, like, yikes.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of yikes moments from Jennifer, and I don't know if it was to make her seem evil or if it was supposed to be like snarky, like funny, whatever.
Right.
Because this is 2009, and it wasn't that long ago. I mean, it was only 10 years ago, but the conversation around jokes like this was really different. So
so in one aspect, the film is kind of like, oh, okay, we hadn't had those conversations in the mainstream discourse yet, but it is kind of interesting. You're like,
No, totally. I mean, this was still a time when like it was very common for comedians to make rape jokes, and you were still seen as like a joyless feminist for critiquing those. Whereas now it's like we kind of accept as a culture that that's not okay. So it's a very, not that people don't make them, but it's just the conversation was really different. And there's like, it's identity politics is just really, really heightened right now. And I think at the time, they were just kind of making like snarky jokes that ended up in retrospect being like pretty problematic. But like even at the time, like when she says, "Oh, you should get a Chinese chick to buff those out," I remember even at the time I was like, "Whoa, I don't like that."
Yeah.
So
I was like, "Whoa."
Yeah, and I was sort of, I remember like I was like on a little like kind of Diablo Cody like hate train for a second, because I was like, I don't like some of her jokes, and I think, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, it's worth noting that this isn't like a perfect bastion of feminist media or anything. It's just like some movie with some interesting things going on.
Yeah,
and it's very entertaining. And after,
like, and during that, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, because during the early aughts, like, we now have what we call it's like that hipster ironic bigotry where you're like, oh, I'm saying this ironically,
yes.
but it's like you're still.
Yeah. Great point. That's a great point. Yeah, like it's the hipster bigotry. Back when you could still back when people were still being called hipsters. So
what do we call them now?
I don't know. I mean, I just feel like it's everybody now. Like it's just taken over. Like everyone is. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I also live in Brooklyn, so it's like constant. Maybe I have a warped view. So after Needy says she kind of likes Colin, then that's when Jennifer wants him and invites him over to watch Aquamarine, another famous 2009 movie. And she's like, it's about a chick who's like half sushi or something. And
I definitely don't want Jennifer writing movie reviews. Like...
Oh my God. And Needy and Chip are like they're having a date at the same time that Jennifer is having a date. And Jennifer meets Colin at this creepy abandoned house where she's like arranged an area that's lit with candles. It's very satanic. And she also has a hotline where she says, we can play mommy and daddy. And, I was into that.
I was also going to say that, but it's also worth noting during this scene, I had issues with this scene because I was like, Colin, why didn't you notice that this house is like abandoned? Like, what's going on?
I know. I guess he was just like, I mean, this is another thing is like, would Colin have really liked Jennifer? Like, this could also just be part of her spell on people.
That's true. That's true.
She like lured him in, and even though he knew it was wrong, he still went.
Because he's like, you don't even know my last name.
Yeah, he still goes because he's like under her power.
Yeah, and then she's playing Akon for him. That's her seduction music.
Oh, that was hilarious. Yeah. And she says to him, I need you frightened and I need you hopeless. And that's when she attacks him and starts to, eat him alive. And Needy is like experiencing at the same time Jennifer's thoughts. And while she's having sex with Chip and Jennifer is killing Colin at the same time, she can like see it and feel it. And she's freaking out and horrified, even though Chip is like inside her. And Chip thinks she's having like a great time. And
I know.
That was also interesting because it sort of speaks to how sex and horror are very entwined for women. Like,
yes,
it's very, when you have sex with a man for the first time, like, it's not, it can be really painful because men don't know what they're doing. Young men don't know what they're doing. And it's famously painful. And it's, also scary because there's so many more risk factors for women who can get pregnant and give birth. Like, you know, you could get pregnant and need an abortion. You know, he could just kind of decide to snap and like assault you. Like, there's so many risk factors that go into that. And there's like also an old cultural joke of like people thinking that hearing screams and not knowing if a woman is like having sex or being killed.
Right.
So in that moment, it's kind of like entwined there for her.
Yeah, and then this scene is interesting too because like we're getting the two scenes, and I made a note that the scene with Colin is like actually the most brutal murder in the film, because we like actually see it happen. As with Jonas, we just see her jaw unhinge, but with Colin, who is kind of like, you know, he's portrayed as effeminate, he gets the brutal treatment basically.
Yes,
like he's like ripped
That's
to
a good
pieces,
point.
basically.
Yeah.
And, you know.
Yeah.
And then Chip kind of ruins the scene for me by going, oh, is it because I'm too big? It's like, not everything is about you, Chip.
Shut the fuck up, Chip. Yeah, the theme of this episode is that we hate Chip. And we see, like, Jennifer slurping up Colin's blood from his dismembered body, like, cupping her hands and drinking it. And
oh, I know.
It's so crazy. Needy drives away like distraught. Oh, go ahead.
Oh yeah, there's just so much to note about this movie. But also going back to what you were saying about the animals in that scene, don't rats appear?
Oh yeah.
And he's like squicked out by him, and she's like, "Oh, I thought you were like into like dark shit or whatever." And he's like, "Those are rats."
Yeah, that you're right. They start like coming out to be with her.
Yeah, the rats appear, and then there's a shot of his bloodied hand holding like a rosary.
Oh yes, you're right. There's so much like, religious and pagan imagery in this movie. It's a really good point. So.
Poor Colin. You should have been dating Needy.
I know. I really liked Colin, actually. So Needy drives away distraught and sees Jennifer in the road looking bloody and feral, and Jennifer jumps on her car like a demon, and Needy runs home and thinks of Jennifer, who is actually hiding in her bed. And surprise, and she pops up, and then we have the makeout scene that made us gay, where Needy and Jennifer.
But it also has another one of your kind of lines in it. She's like, "Well, we always play like." Doesn't she say like something about like we always play boyfriend girlfriend?
Yeah. She's like we always sleep in the same bed when we have sleepovers. We could play boyfriend girlfriend. And this scene, I mean, like, there's been a lot of sexual tension between them up until this point, and there's, like, a thin line between best friend and lover when you're a high school girl. Like, you're around each other all the time. You have sleepovers. No one's stopping you from having a sleepover because your parents don't think you're going to have sex. And, a lot of homoerotic stuff goes on. So this is very accurate. And Diablo Cody herself said that she based it on her experiences where she was like really, really close to a female friend, and they were basically like in love and in a relationship. So also, I was wondering, too, if Jennifer has, like, put a spell on Needy, or has Needy always wanted this? And maybe, like, you need the illusion of being under someone's power so you can act on what you really want.
Yeah, because, like, I also feel that way, too, because, like, we see that Needy has some sort of, like, assertive personality because, like, she stands up to the band at the bar. And there are moments where her personality do shine through where she is assertive. But I definitely got the feeling that there was some kind of, I don't want to say witchery at play, but like some seduction at play here, because one moment she's looking at Jennifer like, how the fuck did you get into my bed? And then they're like making out.
Yeah, and like really making out. Like not just like a shy kiss. They're like making out. So
they're making out.
Yeah. And I think when I saw this was probably my favorite part of the movie. uh, but this is when then they this is also something that happens with teen girls. They trauma bond because Jennifer tells her about this assault that she experienced with Low Shoulder, where she told the band, well, she's in the van with them, and they're like talking about her in a very creepy way, and she says, "Are you guys rapists?" And Adam Brody says, "Oh God, I hate girls." And I'm like,
yeah, and like they don't even answer her. They're
they don't even answer.
The other band members were silent.
Yep. And it's just like such a toxic, scary moment. It like really was very visceral for me. I was like, oh my God, that's such a scary answer to that question. Like,
yeah.
What the fuck kind of answer is that? So
I know.
Right. And Jennifer tells the band that she's a virgin, thinking that is going to spare her from being raped. And I remember they don't really tell people. I don't think they really tell teenage girls that anymore. I guess I wouldn't really know. But I remember at the time, I don't know about you, but I remember they used to tell us, like, if you're going to be raped, tell them you're a virgin because then they won't rape you. And I'm like, in what universe? Like,
in what universe? Oh my God.
Yeah. Like,
I've not heard that. That is horrifying.
Yeah. Like I used to hear that in health class and stuff. They'd be like, just say you're a virgin, say you have AIDS. I'm like, what? They're not going to care. Like, they're already going to rape you. Like, they clearly don't care about your body. Like,
yeah,
it's just absurd.
Another example in the ways in which we're taught how to not be raped as opposed to just telling people not to be rapists. Like,
yeah, exactly. So they're actually, they want to sacrifice her because they're trying to make it as a band, and they're going to sacrifice her for fame, and they tie her down, and they're off.
Wait, before we get into that part though,
yeah,
that's a funny moment before, I mean, it's a kind of like gallows humor, but Adam Brody's character is like, it's really hard to make it as an indie band. You have to get on some shitty soundtrack, which I thought was a nice dig at the OC because the OC got really famous for its soundtrack.
Yes. Oh my God.
And then I think they name check Maroon 5.
Yeah, they do. They do. They talk about Maroon 5. I mean, it's also like a kind of, it's like meta because this, they're Through the Trees is like the soundtrack of this movie. So, yeah, you're right. And I mean, at this time, like, there was such an oversaturation of these guys in music.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of it's also like an interesting time capsule.
Mm-hmm.
So they tie her down in the woods at the falls, at Devil's Kettle Falls, and they stab her to death while singing 8675309.
That's so terrifying because like really they stop midway and they're like, "Jenny, you're the one for me," and she's like looking at them like, "What is going on?" And then they start singing together. So that scene is just so scary to me because it's like that breaking. I don't want to say the fourth wall, but it's like they interrupt this moment of horror with this innocent song, but that's not even all that innocent because I always wonder about the origins.
It's about a stalker. Yeah, like
like it's just so like nuanced. That whole you're just like, oh my God, like. But also, the bandmate's like, where did you get that murder weapon? That's a sexy murder weapon. He's like, oh, it's a Bowie knife.
And the guy's like, sick Bowie. Yeah, like it's very typical of these like rocker kind of dudes, and the whole scene is just a huge rape metaphor.
Yeah, and it's just like they just have zero concern for Jennifer. Like the lack of care is really. They don't even see her as a person. They're like making jokes, basically.
Yeah, I mean, and it is really like that writer for Vox said, like that account where Christine Blasey Ford was talking about how Brett Kavanaugh assaulted her and men were standing around and laughing. Like that happens, and like not to make it too dark, but that is something that when I was raped by a group of guys when I was blackout drunk a few years ago, that is something that happened to me. Like, I woke up and all these men were like laughing at me. So this is, I mean, not to, like, I don't want to, I'll trigger warn the episode. Like, it's hard for me to, like, when we're talking about things that are so close to me, to not talk about my own experience, because But
you should talk about it.
Yeah, you're right. I should. And it's just very, this could only have been written and directed by a woman, this scene, because it's very accurate of how that experience actually is. And it does feel like a death of a kind. So it's like, we're told our whole lives that this is like the worst thing that could ever happen to you as a woman. And then it does happen. And it's like, okay, now what? The worst thing that's ever could happen to me has happened already, and I'm still alive. So what now? I think the way that the film deals with that is really, really smart, because she does die and come back as something else, this new person. And I mean, again, like, it happens in the woods. And it's also like, the interesting thing here is like the Satanism and the witchcraft being appropriated by men. And and they're perverting it. Like, they ruined it. They ruined the sacrifice. So
yeah, totally, because they use it for their own selfish gains, and like,
exactly, yeah. And
right.
I mean,
they only care about themselves.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure this is something you're familiar with. Like, Satan has been reclaimed throughout centuries by women as like an agent of empowerment and sexuality. So for these guys to, like, you know, take Jennifer's power in the woods, which is like this primal, like, feminine space, and like kill her in there, and then she comes back and like now she fucking owns the woods and she owns Satanism. It's like this kind of, it's amazing. Like, it's very, very, you know, smart. So Jennifer explains that she doesn't know why she's alive, but she woke up and she found her way back to Needy's, killing and eating the Indian exchange student.
Yeah, she goes back to Needy, not her mom.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, she goes back to Needy, not anyone else. And she kills and eats this Indian exchange student, Ahmet, on the way. And
poor guy.
I know, poor Ahmet. The only Ahmet and Colin, the only nice men in the movie.
And it's interesting because, like, Colin is like, you know, he has like queer signifiers, because, you know, they make a joke about him listening to music that's like not traditionally masculine. And then Ahmed is like a character of color who's, I guess we're to assume that he's an immigrant. He doesn't speak a lot of English.
Well, he's an exchange student, they say.
Okay, yeah. And, you know, he doesn't get a lot of screen time, but in those moments that we are with Ahmed, we immediately feel the horror for him, because he doesn't know where to go. And like, the way they treat Colin and Ahmed, it's like a reversal of certain female archetypes in horror films, where you empathize with the character only to have something terrible happen to them.
Yeah, you're right.
So.
And also there's like a long tradition, and this is something I think that the movie gets wrong. There's a long tradition in teen comedies of like the funny foreign exchange student, and it's always like a very racist trope. And here, like, I don't necessarily think that the portrayal of him is like, I mean, I don't know, I guess it's not for me to say. Like, I don't think he's a stereotype or anything, but he you know, he still is like a footnote. And he's still...
Yeah, he's a footnote.
Yeah, he's a footnote, and he's a casualty in this white story, which you have to be critical of.
Right.
And there was actually really no reason for him to even be in the movie, like, except as a casualty, and I don't necessarily like that.
Right.
So she says when she's full that she's unkillable, but when she's hungry, she starts to wither and needs to feed. And Needy is like, what do you mean when you're full? And Jennifer is just kind of cryptic about it. Yeah. Jennifer is just kind of cryptic about it, and she leaves through the window. And Needy, there's Colin is, dead. They find him. Yeah, people describe him as lasagna with teeth. And
Oh my god, that was
so gross. Needy does research on the paranormal and finds out that Jennifer is most likely a succubus, which is also interesting because I think that this is honestly how the media saw Megan Fox at this time, as like kind of a succubus.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so it's kind of like playing with that. Chip approaches Needy.
It's also like,
You go ahead.
like, I don't want to say a reversal. I don't want to say it's a reversal, but it is kind of like what we're not used to seeing succubus portrayed as. Because I'm thinking of, like, for example, Lost Girl, right? She's like sexy and seductive, but she doesn't like actually kill anybody. Like, sex is the primary weapon there. But succubus in Jennifer's body is like, I'm gonna lure you in just to eat you and like literally devour you.
And I think that is like a traditional succubus. Like, I think the succubus is supposed to like uses sex, kind of like a vampire, like uses sex to lure someone in, but then like devours their soul. So I think that is like the traditional view of a succubus, and then the male version of that is an incubus. So like the band.
I was like the band.
Yeah. So Chip approaches Needy and she tells him not to go to the school formal and that Jennifer is actually evil, not high school evil. And
not high school evil.
Yeah, but like really evil. And she tells him about demonic transference, and that is what happens when you try to sacrifice someone who isn't a virgin, specifically a woman. So this is like a subversion also of the final girl concept and of like the concept of like virginity saving you, and a rape victim also as like a monstrous figure. So because in horror movies it's like famously like the girl who's a virgin survives and the girl who's a slut dies,
right?
And in this, like, they think she's a virgin, but she's actually a slut, and she comes back. So the slut doesn't die.
Yeah, I was thinking that. I was like, Jennifer is basically the story of every, quote unquote slutty girl that dies first in the horror film.
Yes, exactly. But it becomes the main character of the movie instead. And yeah, there really is no perfect virgin in this movie. Needy isn't a virgin either. So it's there's none of that in this. So it's like a subversion of that. And then also it plays into this very old trope of the rape victim as monster. I mean, which starts with Medusa. Like ancient Greek, like Medusa is raped and that's why she becomes Medusa. So it's, like you were saying earlier, when, Jennifer comes back and she's really mean, there is this very smart connection going on between this major personality shift after sexual trauma and the way that women have historically been portrayed as monstrous after an event like this, because you're like a ruined woman. Like, the worst thing that can happen to you has happened to you. So, which has, of course, been typically written by and portrayed by men. So,
basically.
Yeah. So Diablo Cody and Karen Kusama are kind of like playing with that. Jennifer is fading again and she needs to feed. Needy now.
Someone get her some Taco Bell, like.
Yeah, seriously. And Needy is now we're going to the dance, and Needy is at the dance in the most hideous dress on earth, which is like an homage to 80s
I don't
teen.
understand this dress. This needs its own separate podcast.
It really does, because it's an affront.
I couldn't, for the life of me, understand what I was like. The movie takes place in the 2000s, and yet there's dress. I
think it's supposed to be like an homage to 80s teen movies. I don't know if it's like successful because it's so weird and out of place, but
so awful.
It's like the Pretty in Pink dress, or like in Never Been Kissed, which is not an 80s movie, but there's a flashback to her in the 80s in that hideous dress. So
it's so bad.
Yeah, so I think it's supposed to be playing with that. Maybe there's like a deleted scene we haven't seen. So
I would hope so.
yeah,
That
right.
dress is
Because can somebody
horrible.
explain it?
Can someone explain it?
Chip is walking to the dance alone when he's approached by Jennifer, who starts talking about how she's concerned for Needy, and she lies that Colin and Needy were having a sexual relationship, and she tells him that she has feelings for him. And they start
Well, she appeared like Spectre. Like when
Yeah.
she approaches
in that white
she looks like a
dress.
ghost.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And
Yeah,
it's like
she
in a
looks like a
field.
ghost.
Yeah.
Yeah, she materializes out of nowhere.
Very Wuthering
The nice
Heights.
goth homage.
Yeah, it's so like classically gothic. It's like it's
Mhm.
almost like he's like walking across the moors and like a ghost is like following him. It's very much like that kind of imagery.
Mhm.
And they start making out, and this is, another big theme of the movie, like of lesbian jealousy. Like over
Oh, right.
yeah, your best friend's boyfriend, and it's like getting to him is a way to get to Needy.
If I can't have you, I'll take your boyfriend. Huh?
Exactly.
Because, lesbians are all, they're all villains and
Well, this
monsters
is
in their
another
own
thing
right.
is I don't know if they like Diablo Cody and Karen Kusama, by all accounts, they're married to men. So I actually don't know if Diablo Cody's still married to her husband, but regardless, like this is a little problematic. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very. It is amazing in a lot of ways because it's written from a women's perspective, but it's like a limited women's perspective, and it's still
Yes.
kind of their relationship is still kind of filtered through this heterosexual gaze.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, I just feel like Diablo Cody, like when she was talking about, I had close relationships with my female friends, blah, blah, blah. I feel like she was using like queer women as like a more of a symbol than an actual thing that actually happens.
Right. Mhm.
And I was like, okay, but do you know that feeling? Because some of us grew up to actually
Yeah,
be
exactly.
dykes. Yeah.
Do you know what that?
Yeah, exactly. Like, what about those of us who grew up to actually be in relationships with women? So
Right? Because, like, if you're a queer person watching this movie, it takes on other, like, meanings as opposed to if you're, like, heterosexual and you're watching, you're like, oh, yeah, I've had relationships with someone, who have might have been of the same gender, where it's like, I felt romantic tension, but, that was just in high school. Like,
and it's like, meanwhile, we're the ones that they felt romantic tension with, and we're like, anyway, we're still gay.
yeah, right?
Yeah. So it's, yeah, definitely. Low Shoulder is playing at the dance.
Of course.
Of course. And Jennifer and Colin are still, not Colin, Jennifer and Chip are still making out, and she says, say I'm better than Needy. Which again is like lesbian jealousy, predatory thing.
Mm-hmm.
And Needy can telepathically feel that Jennifer is with Chip, and she's always connected to Jennifer. Yes. And Needy runs to find Chip, who is in an abandoned, overgrown indoor pool. Which
that scene, that shot is so. I love how ugly it is, but it's also gorgeous in its ugliness because it's like the water, the vines. It's very. The last couple shots of the film are very interesting.
Yes.
Like what they're doing.
It's really gorgeous.
Everything is in decay.
And there's also graffiti on the wall that says "hopeless."
Oh yes, it did say that.
And Jennifer says, "I feel so empty," which is like a double entendre, right? Because she's empty, like literally, because she needs to eat. But she's also empty inside. And they like start kissing again, but Chip rejects Jennifer, and he's like, I can't do this. And she flips out.
Yeah, because he like empathizes with her for a moment there, because she's like, I feel so empty, and he's like, yeah, me too.
Yes.
And it's like the only moment where I'm like, oh, Chip's not that bad.
Yeah. Well, this is like the last, his last scene, I guess, like sort of redeems him, whatever.
Sort of.
Yeah, whatevs. Chip rejects her, and she flips out, and she drags him into this pool and starts to feed on him. And Needy arrives and finds Jennifer feeding on Chip. And Needy and Jennifer fight. And Jennifer like famously floats above the pool, and he's like, oh my God, she's flying. And Needy is like, it's not that impressive. She's just floating. And
She's like, why are you being such a player hater?
yes. And they exchange like a bunch of verbal digs. And Jennifer is like, I was the snowflake queen. And Needy is like, yeah, when you were socially relevant and didn't need laxatives to say skinny.
Oh my God.
So it's just like this.
I like the nice big Hannah Montana. That was a really good one.
That was really funny. This is like, there's like some of the best lines in the movie in this scene. And
yeah, and it's also interesting that this is the scene where Needy's like, you were never a good friend. Like, she brings it to the focus that Jennifer might not have been the best friend that she could have been for her.
yeah,
And you kind of feel this heartbreak for Needy because it's like, your friend is gone and she's this monster and you know something terrible happened to her, but also at the same time, she's not a good friend. So there's like all this conflicting emotion and yeah,
totally. And I mean, it also like, you know, brings again up that theme of like the thin line between obsession and hatred and frenemies and all that shit. And Needy, you know, she's like going to kill Needy too. And she says, I thought you only murdered boys. And Jennifer says, I go both ways. Which is a great line.
It's a great line, but it's kind of like that bisexual trope that's also slightly problematic.
Definitely. Well, and also something I found interesting is Megan Fox is actually bisexual.
Yes.
And has used the word bisexual. Like, she's not just saying like, yeah, I could fall in love with anyone. Like, she said, I am bisexual. So it's, that is interesting too. I believe she was out at this time as well. So it's like a sort of like almost a nod to that as well.
Yeah, and it also calls into question too, because in the movie we're watching and we're always presented with the evidence that it's Needy who's in love with Jennifer. What if it was the other way around? What if this is like a Regina George case where Jennifer is mean because she is, you know,
obsessed.
Dealing with
yeah,
you know, like she's closeted. What if she's like, you know, dealing with like being a queer person and, you know, just there's a lot there. There's a lot going on with Jennifer's character.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, I think you're right. I think that the love that they have for each other is like mutual. And I think that they have no idea how to express it other than this like intense hatred of each other. So Chip impales Jennifer with like a steel rod and she escapes through the window, and Needy and Chip have a moment and he dies. Whatever. And now we're back to the beginning scene in Jennifer. I know, I'm such a bitch. We're back to the beginning scene.
Wait. We have to go back to the best line in that scene, though. She's like, I'm going to eat your soul and shit it out with me.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, give Megan Fox the Oscar for that line.
Honestly, bring her back. Like, I would really like to see her in movies again.
Yes.
So now we're back to the scene in the beginning in Jennifer's room where Needy breaks in and attacks her, and Jennifer bites Needy in the attack, and she like brings out a box cutter to Needy brings out a box cutter to stab her, and Jennifer says, "Do you buy all your weapons at Home Depot? God, you're butch." And
I love that line.
Yeah, some more queer baiting there. And they fight midair, and it looks kind of almost like they're having sex. And
it does.
It really does.
It does.
So some more of that there, which is also very reminiscent of The Lost Boys, because there's a lot of gay subtext in that movie too. And a lot of floating in the air. So Needy rips off Jennifer's BFF necklace, which is very symbolic, and she stabs her in the heart with the box cutter. And Jennifer says, "My tit." And Jennifer's mom finds Needy like with the body like freshly killed. It's a pretty horrific scene. And
it is. Is that the first we're seeing of her mom, by the way?
It is the first and only time.
I was like, does she have a mom? And then her mom, I was like, oh, she did have a mom. Okay.
Yes.
Cool.
So we're back to Needy in solitary confinement, and now she's floating. And she says that she was turned into a demon by Jennifer's bite. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of symbolism here around the bite.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of queer stuff going on.
English major in New Mexico. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where do you even begin? Like, you know, just, I mean, also the link to vampirism, which is also a huge queer trope.
Yes.
And, you know, they're forever connected, just like they were before, telepathically.
All vampires are gay, and people can fight me on that. But
Every single vampire in the world is queer, and every single demon is queer. You can't live for hundreds of years feasting on people and not be queer. Come on.
yeah, I mean, like the evidence is just there.
It's
like,
just there. It's just empirically there. So she breaks out of the hospital, and while on the road, she sees the dagger that killed Jennifer, the Bowie knife. And it's now we know, right? We know now where the Devil's Kettle leads because they tossed the dagger into the vortex and it came out the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And now, I mean, this is also heavily symbolic. Like, Needy can now see the other side of things. Like, she used to be this innocent kind of nerdy girl, and now she's like on this completely other side of life. And she's becoming like an outsider other. And she takes that knife and she hitchhikes, and she immediately gets picked up by a creep who's like obviously
he's not creepy.
yeah, he's like obviously some kind of predator, but of course we know that she could kill him and eat him if she wanted to. So
he's like getting my chariot. It's like chariot. Ew, like
yep. He's really gross. It kind of is like also like the end of the movie Teeth. Have you seen that movie?
say them again.
It's kind of like the end of the movie Teeth, where she gets in the car with the guy. Yeah. And she's off to find Low Shoulder. And this is when Hole starts playing. But it's not Jennifer's body.
It's Violet.
It's Violet, yeah. Which, I mean, I kind of prefer because it would have been too, like, matchy to have it be Jennifer's body. And then we get the epilogue where we see in a series of, like a montage that Needy has killed and eaten all of the members of Low Shoulder.
Yeah, and those scenes are so, like, not to be like true crime all about it, but those shots are so gorgeous though.
They really are. I mean, and also like the police crime scene shots at the end, like it's, you know, it's really fun, and even the, like, to get graphic designy with it, even the text introducing everybody's names, like the neon pink text over like these gory crime scenes, is so like Riot Girl.
It's so stylized.
It's so like, stylized. Okay. Yeah, I really love it. So that is Jennifer's body.
Wait. But the last shot, we see that Adam Brody has been stabbed with his own Bowie knife.
Oh, yes. I forgot that detail. Yeah. So it's all like full circle. What do you think is going to happen with Needy after this?
You know, she doesn't have a boyfriend named Chip anymore. So, I mean, there's only one way after that is up, right?
Just be a succubus. Yeah.
I kind of feel like she's now, like you were saying, on the outsides of society. So I actually don't know. Like, maybe she's going to keep hitchhiking and killing dudes. I
hope
know.
So. Yeah. I mean, I think now, like 10 years later, I think we're like more ready for this movie. But I think at the time when it came out, I think it was just like too over the top. I think it just went over people's heads. And it's, I mean, thanks for picking it. It was really fun to revisit it.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I think it's fun in a lot of ways, and like there's so much subtext there, like we were talking about, that you can have a field day just revisiting some of those tropes, like the religious imagery that is surely in the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. There's so much of it. So much like witch imagery, so much Catholic imagery. You know, and you could go on and on, like witches were said to live in the woods, and then like all of this stuff that happens in the woods with witchcraft, and it's very it's all linked. And you know, witches were also said to be able to communicate with each other telepathically, and that's what Jennifer and Needy are doing in the movie. And it's just very like rich with all of those things, and on the surface seems like this kind of like teen sex romp, but is so much more than that.
Yeah.
So is there any last words that you wanted to say about Jennifer's Body?
I want to talk a little bit about Low Shoulder.
Okay.
I feel like by saying that, I feel like that scene in Death Becomes Her when they're like, it's a group therapy, and the lady's like, I want to talk about Madeline Ashton, and the other one starts screaming. Like, that's how I feel about Low Shoulder. Someone brings up their name and I want to start screaming. But did they have any other songs in the movie, or is it just Through the Trees?
It's just Through the Trees, yeah.
Which is already a stalker-ish kind of song. It's like,
totally. Yeah.
The band is so creepy.
They're creeps. I hate them. They're awful. And like Adam Brody is the most loathsome, but like all of them are awful. Yeah. I mean, they're very specific kind of guys that I think we've all met at one point in our lives. You've been there.
I think the other subtext is like, don't date boys in indie bands.
No, don't do it.
Don't do it.
So, Serafina, where can people find you on social media if you want them to?
I'm on Instagram, and I have a Twitter account, but I've literally not tweeted a single thing. So.
Please come to join me in Twitter land. I'm there. And you can find me on Instagram as Girls Guts Giallo, and you can also find me on Twitter as Girls Guts Giallo. And most importantly, you can find my Patreon at patreon.com/girlsgutsgiallo. Just Girls Guts Giallo, no and. And you're gonna get a newsletter with all of the readings that I did for this episode. So check that out. And until next time, thank you, Serafina, for joining me. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. And I'm Annie Rose Malamet, and you're listening to Girls, Guts, and Giallo. See you next Friday.
All alone in an empty room, nothing left but the memories of when I had my best friend, and I don't know how we ended up here. I don't know, but it's never been so clear. We made a mistake.